heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. Leon Morris calls this statement, that I am the bread of the life, a supremely majestic statement. It really is wonderful. It really is amazing. It really is sublime. Jesus could say, in truth, I am the bread of life. But we need to look at it in its context. As students of the Bible, we always need to ask, when did Jesus say it, and why did Jesus say it, and who did Jesus say it to? And that helps us have a better understanding of what's being said. So let's look at the context. If you go back to the start of John chapter 6, what's John 6 about? John 6 begins with Jesus feeding the 5,000, and what did he give them? Bread. That's not disconnected, is it, from Jesus' statement? Jesus gives 5,000 hungry people bread and fish. So those two things are connected. He does this remarkable miracle. It's a jaw-dropping moment where Jesus takes a boy's food, just 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish, and Jesus multiplies that and feeds a huge crowd, 5,000 men, plus women and children. This is Jesus, God's Son, showing his power with a miracle of multiplication. And he gives the crowd plenty of bread, because John tells us they all had enough to eat, and then 12 basketsfuls were collected. So you start with a very small lunch, he feeds everybody, they're all totally satisfied, and then there's 12 basketfuls at the end. It's astonishing, it really is. Jesus just showing his mastery of the situation. But then as you keep reading through John, sadly, some of the people thought, we want more of this. They start seeing Jesus as a source of bread. If we could just find Jesus again, we might get some more lunch. So people start to think in terms of, let's get more from Jesus. And have a look at verse 25. What happens there? Verse 25, they go looking for Jesus, and it says, when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? Jesus answered, because he knows what they're thinking, very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. So that's what's happening here. Jesus uses their interest in bread, and he runs with that, and then he comes out with this great, I am the bread of life statement. They remind Jesus in verse 31 that bread came down manna from heaven, and Jesus says to them in response in verse 32, very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. So Jesus is teaching them, you've come into a new era now, and the true bread is here. And the true bread has come down from heaven, sent from the Father. So where are they going to get that bread? Then he comes out with this profound statement, I am the bread of life. It's stunning. Jesus uses a metaphor to say something marvellous. He's the bread from heaven, and if you eat this bread, you inherit eternal life. We're going to look at the eternal life part later. But first, let's just think more about the actual statement, that I am the bread of life. Why did Jesus choose bread as his metaphor? Why not I am meat, or I am water, or something else people need? My girls and I watched an episode of Man vs. Wild with Bear Grylls recently, where he was in the Sahara, and he just dropped the comment that, in that very, very hot environment, 50 degrees or so, you can go 3 weeks without food, but you don't last long without water. You absolutely have to have water every few hours. So there must be some reason why Jesus chose bread rather than water as the metaphor here, apart from the fact that the people were chasing more bread. Well, the thing is that bread was very important in that culture. There was a connection between bread and life in the Jewish culture in Palestine. Bread was necessary. Bread was a commodity you had to have. Bread was a staple food. There weren't a wide variety of options. You couldn't sort of think, well, I don't feel like bread today, so I'll fill up on rice, or I'll have noodles, or I'll cook myself some lasagna. It wasn't like that. You had to have bread. It was a staple. Much like rice is a staple in many Asian cultures today. There are many homes scattered throughout Asia and even in Brisbane where it's a crisis if you run out